Welcome to the Left Wing Back podcast. I'm your host this evening, Brian O'Donoghue. We went into a weekend of GAA with 4 teams left in each of the championships, and we finished on Sunday evening with 2 teams left in each. We've a jam-packed show to bring you. Just to thank our sponsors, first of all, we have Earth Spas, Scats, Bouncing Castles, Dials, Hardware in Bagnallstown, J&J Services, Seamus Byrne Electrical, Carlo Electrical Services, Rail Wheeling Limited, The Arboretum, PFT Travel, and Talbot Fitness. Got them all in, Kev. Delighted to be joined by the founder of the Left Wing Back podcast, Kevin Regan. Good evening.
Good evening, Brian. How's things?
Not good, Kev, not good. And also delighted to be joined by the legend that is, drumroll please, Mr. James Clark.
Good evening. Good evening.
How are you, Clarky? I would have said that after Friday night there was only one game we'd be starting with, and it would have been the Cox and Ballon, because that was unlike anything I know, Kev, you'd ever commentated on. But even listening in, couldn't get to the game, listening in, it was incredible. And then we had that game tonight where senior semi-final, and it's decided on penalties, and it was as dramatic a finish to a senior semi-final as I think anyone has ever seen in Networks Cullen Park, and that's where we have to start. It had everything, didn't it?
It did, Dunzer, yeah. In fairness, it had literally, I would say, everything in the game over the course of the 80 odd minutes. I mean, we were never really going to have a proper spectacle in the normal plus extra time because of the conditions. But what we did have was excitement. And I suppose Rathvilly stole a march in the earlier part of the game. Their first 5 scores, I think, Brian, came with a shot being taken at the post from open play. Right? They were all frees. At least 4, if not the first 5 anyway. And Aero looked in a little bit of bother. Like, I think the Aero went about 20 odd minutes or so without scoring in the first half. But sure, it's typical Aero. They don't throw in the towel. They find a way. They lost Sean Gannon. I mean, they were right to start Gannon, in my opinion, because when you have someone like that who is a bit of a doubt, go from the get-go, see what you get. You're losing one sub, but if you go try to bring him in the last 5 minutes, well, there's another sub on you. And maybe that's a good place to bring Clarkey in, actually. Right call, I would say, Clarkey, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whatever you can get out of Sean Gannon, especially, listen, Sean is a leader in the dressing room. He's a leader on the pitch. Last thing you want in the dressing room is hearing that you're probably your most experienced player through the years, the man who gets the ball, who gets frees for you. The last thing you want to hear in the dressing room is that he hasn't made it, because that's a real downer, you know. And I think absolutely right to start him. I probably would have put him in around the full forward line, but I do think because he went off so early in the game, I don't know how much extra damage he's done to his hamstring. I'd say Stargagans will be probably a new star tonight.
I think from a Rathvilly perspective, obviously we got word kind of filtering through during the week that Brendan and Barry John were going to be out. And from a Rathvilly perspective, when Gannon goes off after 5 minutes, you're blessing yourself. And then when Mark Fury goes off a few minutes later, you're double blessing yourself and thinking maybe this is actually in some way going to even up a bit here. I suppose like if we could have had 1 minute out of Brendan, it might have been the minute that but he just obviously wasn't fit to play. I want to ask the two of you about the way the game ended. For any neutral, it was as dramatic a finish as you can get. But Clarkey, what do you think of a game being decided on penalties?
I'm not in agreement with it. Absolutely, the more we stay away from soccer style game, the better for me. I think both teams put in so much effort during the game, during the year. I think both teams, any club deserves another shot at it over 60 minutes and not to be decided on penalties. I think for me, looking at it, I was intrigued to see why the two sub-keepers went up as well. And seemingly what happens there is, and I only found out this evening, what happens there is that if your keeper gets injured, you can just put in the sub-keeper. Okay. But the interesting part was, I suppose, Darragh O'Brien went down with a very severe case of cramp. And if he would he have to go around and take another penalty the second time around again? I mean, I seen him going back out towards the middle. Now, it didn't get to that. But if he wasn't able to take a penalty, I mean, there's loads of issues, but I think the big issue is there's no way a GAA match should finish on penalties. No way.
Kev, I know you have strong feelings on this, and I'll be honest, let's say if the Tinryland Bagnason game had gone to penalties and that kind of a dramatic finish as well, like from a neutral point of view, you'd be saying it's so dramatic. Obviously, you know, it really hurts the team that lose, and it's elation for the team that wins. But Kev, there's room in the calendar, isn't there?
There absolutely is, and I wanted to do a bit of homework on this just to make sure, and also just for complete and utter clarity. And let Adrian Corcoran be my witness in the press box. Before a penalty was taken, I turned around and I said, "There's just something incredibly uncomfortable about this. This just doesn't feel right." And I was nearly praying for, I think it was the Meath County Board chairperson either this year or last year, went out and he says, "Lads, this is not happening." So broke the rule in the GAA himself as chairperson and said, "No, there's going to be a replay." It's uncomfortable. It's the rule that's in place. We have to live with it. But yeah, I looked at the calendar again, and you're looking at the 21st/22nd of October for the first round of Leinster. That's a month in full from today, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it's in place. That's the rule. We see what happened up in Offaly with rules. Yes, they're there to be broken. I don't think anyone would have been too upset if this particular rule was broken. It gave us the excitement, Dunzer. Like, we're going to be talking about this for years to come. But yeah, like Clarkey, I think personally, what these guys give up, I think they deserve another day out. You're talking about the likes of Gannon and Fury going off there, and Mark Mullen and Cormac Walsh today for Tinryland, and they have a week to get right when it doesn't really have to be that way. And also from the point of view of, like, I mean, penalties, yes, they're taken in soccer. There's a welfare thing there as well. I mean, at the end of the day, they're putting their fucking head through the ringer in the GAA match in something that's completely obscure. Penalties is not a part of the GAA. It hasn't been part of the heritage only the past couple of years. It gave us great excitement, but there's something not right about it. But I don't want to take away from Éire Óg in saying that. I would be saying this if it was Tinryland and Bindlestown as well. Something fucking odd about it. Really, really odd.
And there's a whole conversation, I think, as well around are a GAA goalposts and the distance out suitable for a penalty shootout?
It's not fair on any goalkeepers. And the two lads were amazing today. You know, the two made some great saves. Fair play to them. But I mean, the bottom line is they should never go to penalties in the GAA. No way.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing is trying to look at it from an objective point of view. Both teams could have had chances to win the game, both in normal time and in extra time. Probably the lowest score in extra time in the history of extra time. But in one sense, because neither team was able to take it by the scruff of the neck and power on and kick that winning score, is there that argument to say, well, look, maybe you don't deserve a second bite at the cherry and penalties will sort us out? Or I don't know. It's a tricky one. There was other things happened in the game as well, and we have to, in one sense, give David Hickey a little bit of how would you say, a little bit of I don't know what the word is, but just at the end of normal time, there's about, I reckon there was 15 seconds on the scoreboard clock, and I think it was Conor Doyle was just about to get the ball in the Éire Óg half, but he had an open field in front of him, and the full-time whistle was blown. And I know you could see David pointing to it, telling the players on my watch, definitely the 64 was up, or 66 was up, whatever it was, 66, and the both like players were going, should look at the clock at the scoreboard. In my experience, as soon as the ball is thrown up, you can see that the first second tick off on the scoreboard in Netwatch Cullen Park. we have to give David the benefit of the doubt here, I suppose, don't we?
It's a big thing, I suppose. Yeah, go on, Clarkey, go on ahead.
Yeah, sorry, listen, there was a lot of disgruntled Raf people, and you can see why, because the team in possession, that was a real open field. Connor, he had it. I mean, they were straight down the middle. Not saying they would have scored, but to me, if I was a referee, I'd be given the chance to the person. Listen, give them a chance at, if they were to get held up further down the field, then blow it up. No problem. But listen, David Hickey is a very good referee. You know, I mean, he was going by the time. It seemed a bit strange to me.
It was strange, Brian. I suppose by the same token, like, we have to give great credit to both sides, obviously, but Éireog in sticking in there as they do. I mean, there was an expert elsewhere somehow tipped Éireog to be in relegation final. I don't get that. How could you put Éireog in relegation final? They are Éireog. As Turlough said, they don't get beat by too much if they are going to be beat, and they certainly weren't going to throw in the towel today. And like, in fairness, a lot of people cut the back off of Turlough and Tommy last year. They said they should be gone because they didn't get past the quarter final, and they're back in a final now. And regardless of what happens, I mean, I think a lot of that criticism was quite heavy. And yes, there's high expectations within the club. They fully expect to be in county finals every year, and they fully expect to win them when they get there. So maybe when they don't get past the quarter final, there's a certain amount of that reasonable. But I would say, from their point of view, they deserve a little bit of credit. They've taken that flack. They've put their trust in young guys like Mark Bean, like Dermot Root, like Owen Byrne, young Brady that scored the penalty. This is a new Éireog side.
Really enjoyed your interview with Josh Brady. He was genuinely speechless. He reminded me of the Greek guy that scored a winning penalty for Liverpool in the was it the FA Cup final.
Can't think of his name.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And even the way he ran over to the Éireog supporters, it was real. You know, there was fair shine it. Don't get me wrong, I was absolutely raging he scored it. Peter wasn't a sniper on the scoreboard, but anyway.
Look, Brian, even within the penalties itself, like, Rathvilly went 3-1 up, I think, in the pens, and all they had to do was score one of their last two. And this is where probably, like, you have to give Johnny Fury great credit. I'd be in the goalkeepers union here as well, to an extent, right? He took gambles on at least two of the first three, and I think two went down the middle when he took the gambles to go to either side. He kept with it, like, you know, and in moments like that, a lot of people, and rightly, will remember Josh Brady. He put away the winner. But if Johnny Freud wasn't made those two saves, lads, we're not going to sudden death.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. You know?
Keepers are always the heroes, lads.
Don't anyone tell you any different. Not really, Clarkey.
Yeah.
And Clarkey, is it different? Like, when you were in goals for a penalty, would you have been someone that would pick a side and stick with it, or do you try and jump and move after the ball is kicked, or what's the?
No, definitely stay in the middle. If it goes in the corner, fair play to you. I have two Dan Donnelly long arms myself, and I mean, like, I can, I mean, if I stretch left, if I stretch right, I'm going to get a fair distance. So, bar you hit the penalty, very good. You know, you have a decent chance. I can totally understand why the two keepers might have chose a side, because the penalty spot is in ridiculously close, and it's the disadvantage of the goalkeeper, I think. Yeah. So
you're going to beat that drum all evening, aren't you? No, but look, yeah. Look, so, and Kev, you said it. Éireog are back in a county final after probably been disappointed with their season last year, but they're back at it. The other semi-final today obviously was Tinryland and Bagenalstown Gales. Loads of people saying about the style of football and this, that, and the other. But for any neutral watching that game, it was an absolutely fascinating test match. And Tinryland were very, very organised, very, very disciplined, and it was no surprise to get to that they got over the line in the end, and in terrible conditions as well.
Yeah, I think the turning point of that game was in the 37th minute when I actually looked up and where their keeper, Tinryland keeper, was out and they lost the ball, and Bagenalstown didn't fully take advantage of a shot on goal when there was no goalkeeper in, and to me that would have brought him back within, I think, a point. And I think then it was game on. Now, Kieran Cunningham made a fantastic save after that. So maybe Tinryland are arguing that they could have went on then. But, I mean, everybody's on about the style of Tinryland. If it works for them, it works for them. It doesn't say on the Nationals Cup how you win it. You know, if it works for them. Now, the only concern would be that are they over line still on Paul Broderick? I mean, he kicked some fantastic scores today. Unbelievable footballer. Always has been, always will be. Are they over reliant on him? Probably. And with their system, the one team that you know that can score from distance is probably Airog. Now, Airog only kicked 2 points from play today, I think, and that would be unheard of in Airog terms. But I mean, they can kick scores from distance, and they will probably have to pull their line out a small bit, you know, to deal with that, you know.
There was a very funny moment, and well, it wasn't funny at the time for Paul and for Jonathan Murphy, but Broderick had a free about 40 odd meters out, and he wanted the ball changed, and he threw it to Jonathan Murphy, and Jonathan gave it a squeeze and said, "No, the ball is fine." And you could see Paul going, "I don't want to kick this ball," you know. And he made him kick it. It dropped short, and as Paul was running away, he pointed back at Jonathan and said, "That's your fault."
Paul definitely wasn't trying to waste time around.
Well, I think they had it. I was chatting to Paul briefly after the match, and I think him and Jonathan had a bit of a chat about it afterwards. And Jonathan said to him, "I just thought you were trying to waste time." But but I was curious though, if a player asks for a new ball, is he not entitled to a new ball, or?
No, I don't think so. It's all up to the discretion of the referee and his officials, I think.
Interesting. Kev, Bagenalstown have some like really, really, really good footballers, and I said it to somebody a couple of years ago that I reckoned. So in 2020, I reckon Bagenalstown would be in a senior county final within 5 years, and I still think they have the spine of a really strong team there. You've Alfie Corcoran, 2 Clarks, Robbie, Kane, sorry, Paddy McDonald. Like there's seriously good footballers there. They're not too far away.
They're not too far away, but I was a bit disappointed in them today because I thought there was times where they could have had genuinely a real go and a bit of abandonment. And not, I mean, they didn't have to do anything drastically. It was fairly clear where Tinryland have a little bit of weakness, and that's with a high ball in around the square.
Yeah.
And Darren Nolan was very unlucky not to get a goal from one in around the square. I thought there was an incident in the first half where Bagenalstown probably should have had a penalty when a high ball came in around the square. I think Jamie Clark hit the deck. The one in the second half, a high ball comes in around the square, and Danny Doyle hit the deck. Probably not as clear cut as Jamie Clark's one, but probably on the side of a penalty rather than not a penalty. And I'm not making excuses for them because I do think Tinryland were a little bit better. Clarkey mentioned that goal scoring opportunity. Now that came from Bagenalstown putting pressure higher up the field, and the ball was ripped away and turned over. And Tinryland look very good when they're outside the opposition 45 and the ball is coming across the field. Now, I'd like to see someone go at them and challenge them in that middle third and a little bit higher, because are they as comfortable on the ball when they're under that bit of pressure? I'm not so sure. And that's probably where Aero might look at, is a high ball in around the house and putting a bit of a squeeze on them. Now, look, there's no doubt about it. They are very, very dangerous from a counter-attack themselves, especially on a dry day. And it just goes to show, when you get a ball to Paul Broderick and Dermot Walsh, they will make that half yard even when it's not there to get a shot away. They're two of the best guys in the county at doing it. And if you look at the 3 scores from play that the 2 guys got, say, between them today, they were that type of kind of score. Alfie went over onto Broderick, I think, after he got the 2 points from play, and it was a very good battle to look at. He was unlucky near the end, not quite sure. That could have been the free or Tombo, actually, when there was a clash of feet.
Yeah.
Alfie was irate with that, and if Alfie's irate, I would say he's probably innocent, because it's not in his nature. So from that point of view, like Bagenalstown probably, I think they know that they're better than what they showed today. I mean, 3 points is a pretty poor showing, guys, regardless of what the conditions are.
But do you know the big point is that, and I know it happened to O'Loughlin last week, and I think the structure of the championship is horrendously wrong. That's their 5th week in a row playing, and it's very, very hard to get up at the same intensity, same level every week in a row, especially when maybe like O'Loughlin, we have small panels of lads you can bring on. I mean, like the two Clarks and Alfie Corcoran, I mean, like they have some fantastic. Jack McCullough, I have to say, lads, I would love to see him in county football jersey, because he is absolutely fantastic, like super athlete. And everything was a bit flat today, but for 5 weeks in a row, like I think you mentioned it, Kevin, that there's not some month's time until the first round championship. Why not just give a 2-week break? I mean, like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I think to get up to the level of a semi-final, you have to be fresh. You have to be, I mean, you can't do it mentally, even, let alone physically, week in, week out. I mean, everyone's amateurs, everyone's working, everyone's this and there. I think that's the main point. I really do think,
A couple of statistics that Bagenalstown Gales will have to look at, which are that they did 11 wides and they dropped 5 balls short into Cathal Gaffney's arms, or into a defender's arms. Now, in fairness to Ireland, you'd have to say that there was a lot of times where Bagenalstown were made shoot either under intense pressure or from an angle that they normally wouldn't shoot from. So there's a combination of good defending versus poor shot selection. But in total, that's 16 scoring opportunities. 19 if you include the 3 points they got. There's 19 scoring opportunities, and to only kick 3 is just never going to get you over the line, obviously. Couple of comments have just come in there. Willie Minchin just mentions that Cathal Coughlin asked for a change of ball when taking a free against Bagenalstown in the quarterfinal and felt he couldn't ask a second time. Might be appropriate for County Board to have quality balls available for matches of such significance. And he says, great analysis, Clarkey. Hardly biased, Willie. But that is interesting one. Presumably the balls that are used in matches are just come from the clubs.
Yeah,
I know. I think in soccer the ref brings the ball in the boot of the car, but
and in Wicklow you get locked into the back of it. Yourself, not just the ball.
Absolutely. And Alan Bowe says, couldn't agree with you more, James. The structure from juvenile up to senior is absolutely crazy. And Bambi is in. There's a good football. There's a good football in Lee Walker's backyard from Conor Doyle.
Yeah, correct. That's in relation to the end of normal time, I guess. Yeah, or the injury time in normal time, when Conor wasn't particularly pleased. There was actually strong rumours that was Breyer to kick that, but just was fair distance in it. I'd say it was the longest kick.
I wouldn't have went that far if Breyer kicked it.
Yeah, so look, I mean, what it does set up Brian and Clarkey is like, you couldn't script this really with what has gone on behind the scenes this year with Tinryland and Éire Óg and this league final. I wonder, will they double up now next Sunday? Just out of
it's the only option. It's the only option.
It's an extra gate though if they don't. Isn't that it? And listen, common sense doesn't always prevail,
That's true as well. I think it happened. We played a junior final a couple of years ago, and it doubled as the league and championship to one day. Now
it should, of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Some people might say, well, there's a difference between senior and junior, but when the theory is the same, why not?
Well, it's an easy fix for something that's gone to, apparently or allegedly gone to DRA level. At this particular juncture, sure, that's nearly an easy fix at this stage. But anyway,
maybe someone's getting married next week and they're going to have to change this one as well.
well, it could be a cheaper fix actually to not have it on the same day, because I believe it's got to that level. So it's interesting, but it does generate great intrigue. Now, I don't have the exact year. I bet you Bambi will be back with this in 2 seconds. That Éire Óg played Tinryland in the senior championship final, but they played in a clatter of minor finals, obviously, in the early 90s and probably into late 90s possibly too. And sure, I mean, there's a rivalry there that exists from, I'd say, going back to maybe the 70s and 80s, that now is getting its chance to be rekindled at senior level. And I don't know what it is, guys, about this championship or these championships across all the grades, but there's been something magical for me about the stuff that's happening. And I know we'll come to it later on, Brian, with the junior and stuff, but like Paddy Byrne's story the other night was phenomenal. Paddy Byrne was listening to our commentary on the way to Ballon and the Cox because his wife Antoinette had just given birth to Ayla, new baby daughter, right? So he kindly then, he turns up to the match, plays the last 10 minutes. Ballon lose a cracker. We'll come to it later, I know, but has a chat with us, like, and it just really encapsulates what is important. You have the colour of Alan Quigley, right? Okay, there's a few F-bombs in there, but if every interview was as honest as that, lads, you know. And then today, and I'll share this photo afterwards, just before I went to speak to Johnny Fury, he was on the phone to his mum, who was unwell at the minute. Like, little things like that are what our games are all about. The handshakes between the 5 players taking penalties for Rathvilly and Aero. That's why we love this thing, lads. Plain and simple.
Yeah, definitely. I know we're not going to do predictions. Obviously, the final will be next weekend, and you're looking at an Aero team who need to. For both teams, the whole week's going to be about recovery. I don't think there'll be too many intense training sessions this week. But if you were to say that there was a favourite in it, I don't think you can, because you've got Aero who have knocked out, who were the favourites at most people's eyes at this stage, and a lot of those players have the experience of the 4 in a row not too long ago. And then you have this Tinryland team who are coming. This is their second final in a row, and there's the old saying, sometimes you have to lose one to win one. And there's a lot of the spine of that Tinryland team, and they don't want to finish their careers without a senior championship. So it's going to be absolutely fascinating. We might move it on to the intermediate, unless one of you has anything else to add in the senior.
No, not particularly. Probably won't have up for the match out in Tinryland. That's all. With this whole thing that's going on, I would say we might have to look for a different venue. But anyway, that's if there's going to be one at all, lads.
Yeah. I think courtroom 2 in the district court area is available.
might be the safest option.
Yeah. Senior semi-final, or the intermediate semi-finals, were thrilling as well yesterday in Nevis-Cullen Park. We've a final now between Tullow and Clonmore, which will be equally fascinating. I suppose in the Tullow game, on the one hand, you'd sort of say Erogan, one hand, didn't turn up. The goals really killed them. Tullow were very organised, very efficient, and were in control really and truly from the start. But they deserved their place in the final, Clarkey.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted for Tullow. They worked really hard. I think I was listening to Willie Quinlan during the week, and I think he was dead right, that the big decision that Tullow made this year was to go into the Senior League Division 1. And while most teams might shy away from it and maybe just try to get wins under the belt and maybe try to get a Division 2 title or whatever, Tullow's decision to play up a grade, they played Rathvilly. I think they beat Rathvilly in Tullow. O'Loughlin went over. Tullow were missing quite a few that day and gave us a third time. We were very lucky to get a win. So I think that has stood to Tullow really, really well. They're getting probably a faster pace of football all year, But what is intriguing is I was at the Clonmore Tullow game the last day, and Clonmore really dominated for a long time, and they looked very good, But hopefully Tullow can reverse that maybe.
And there's an interesting side story, and obviously Clarkey, as a former Tullow player herself, but there was an interesting scenario because Jerry McGill started in the goal for St. Pat's.
That's right. Because James Tobin was in goal, and his baby was getting christened. And it's just the way it worked. Listen, Jerry is fantastic. I mean, who wouldn't want Jerry there? He answered the SOS, and he went in. I mean, on short notice, Jerry had played some league games as well for Tullow, so it wasn't as if he was new to it for them or anything like that. So I mean, listen, Jerry did fantastic. Kickouts were brilliant. Made 2 fantastic saves, and that's Jerry McGill. Now, I suppose doing against their Rogue was probably.
I'd say there was silent treatment when he went home.
Maybe, yeah.
Kev, Tullow were very impressive in the semi-final, but it was a very young Rogue team, and they will have more to say probably over the next couple of years, because there's a good crew of players there as well.
There is, and they're building. That's the thing with Rogue. I mean, there's years that they won't win championships, but they have an awful tendency with inexperienced players of getting very far, which obviously pays dividends then in the coming years thereafter, as we're seeing with the senior setup. Obviously, I didn't get to see that one, Brian, but the word on the street, I guess, and from what you were saying, is the moments before halftime ultimately probably decided it. But I suppose in general, and I know you'll have a word on Clonmore and Grange. I believe Grange's shooting was probably a detrimental factor in that one. But overall, if you're to disregard that for a second, you're probably still looking at the two most impressive teams all year in the final, in reality, and it is going to be a cracker, I think. Tullow, they've made great progress in recent years, but they've added to it again this year. They have, and it's a cliche that's put out there a little bit, I suppose, but it is also reality, whereby you look at the size of the place, and for them to not be senior for so long, we need them back up there. But I mean, there's a completely different argument there then about the size of the place and no hurling basically up that side, Brian. Do you know, that's the other side of it. But definitely,
your point is right. A population of over 5,000 now, the third biggest town in Carlow Kilkenny. So that'll tell you exactly that'll tell you how big the population is. Obviously, very strong soccer up there, very strong rugby as well. That's the thing that always gets said, I suppose.
I think the big difference in Tullow in last year, this year, you're seeing the youth coming through, and the juvenile section of Tullow for the last, especially 5-6 years, has really thrived, and all these players coming through, they're all young lads, they're all fit, big men, and that's really coming through. And they're also young lads that want to train, and that's massive, and they want to listen. And I think that's the big thing with Tullow the last 5 or 6 years, that all the from winning the junior, I suppose they were in the final of the junior, they didn't win it, but then they won it, and then they're up to intermediate. So this is going on, this is a process, and I think the last couple of years, juvenile, you're just seeing all them young lads coming through, and it's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
There's a man going to have a very difficult week this week, is Alan Costello. He's over Tullow, but he's principal out in Closh Owen in Hackestown. So I'd say there may be a few interesting conversations in that school this week. Grange and Clonmore, then your heart will go to Grange. They've such limited numbers, but they die with their boots on, and probably just came up against a more organised panel, and Clonmore had a lot of experience to bring off the bench. Owen Coleman came on, Croc Mulvaney came on. Coleman gets the crucial score, really, that kills the game off. But it was a really good game of football, a real pure game of football. There was no sort of shite in it. It was just a really good contest. Your heart would go to Grange, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah, can I just pick you up on that, actually, Brian? Because if you look at one simple, subtle thing there, and you've mentioned the two guys, Mulvaney and Coleman, right? So Clonmore, right, Mulvaney's got his injury problems and possibly could be in line to start. Coleman maybe likewise. But nevertheless, they have the luxury of being able to bring them into a game.
Yeah.
Whereas Grange, with the likes of maybe a John Murphy, Pender didn't start a few games, but guys in around that age bracket, they're forced to start them. Now, Murphy be starting anyway, don't get me wrong. But as a generational thing, Clonmore can bring in the experience. Grange have to go with it from the get-go. And I'm not going to say they're fighting a losing battle, but that's a big, big difference between those two whenever something's coming down the home stretch. I mean, we could be talking about this from a completely different point of view. Grange could be after getting the benefit of the doubt and going through despite all this, or in spite of all this. But the point would still be relevant in the sense that that's there. Clonmore have depth. Grange probably don't have as much of it. And like St. Patrick's, they're not exactly shallow when it comes to bringing a few guys off the bench either that can make a bit of a difference. So that's
100%.
It is depth. It is a numbers game.
Clonmore have some seriously impressive youth. Oisin Doyle looks like he is a real player when things are going his way. And I tell you, I think one of their key men is Tom Pollard. He gets through an absolute mountain of work, and there isn't a phase of play that goes by where Pollard doesn't seem to get his hands on the ball. It's really impressive. Clarkey, you weren't at that game, were you?
I wasn't at that game. No, I was just hoping for a Tullow Grange final, but
there'll be more popcorn needed for that one. And for anyone that missed it, just before the intermediate games yesterday, Billy Fannin came over looking for Kevin, and I said, no, Kevin's not here today. And he pulled out out of his tiny little backpack. It was like a Harry Potter thing where he pulled this massive bucket of popcorn out of this tiny little backpack, and he said, there you go, that's for the Ballin Cox game, which will come to in a moment. But sticking with the intermediate, I think we'd all agree the two best teams in the intermediate championships here have reached the final.
Definitely.
I know, Kev, we're not going to do predictions, but the two most well-drilled, the two most organised teams in it, and two teams who probably feel that they've, I don't want to say a God-given right, but two teams who would feel that they probably belong in the senior championship. I knew I grew up expecting Rathvilly and Clonmore to meet in the senior every year, and it's a long time since they've been there. So it's going to be one hell of a final next week.
It's going to be a cracker. Of course it is, yeah, for sure. And like that, I mean, yeah, I would associate Clonmore largely with senior championships rather than juniors or intermediates as such. And like, don't forget, St. Patrick's have endured a relatively difficult enough period as well by their standards. And Clarkey will remember them being pretty good and played for a fairly solid senior outfit or whatever. Actually, one thing I probably should have done to give it the clearer picture. Do you know what? See this piano in the corner? When you went over to O'Loughlin, is that what you spent the money on? Was it when they gave you the few bob?
That was one of many things, yeah. Did you see the fireplace? That's always Stone Development.
Yeah. Brendan Cannon Furniture or hurling sponsor probably looked after the surround there as well, I would say. But no, we're only having the crack. But look, the two sides, you couldn't begrudge either of them going up senior. I mean, it would be like they're the last 2 years junior champions, I think. No, St. Patrick's won it in 2021, but it was 2020 final. Mm-hmm. Was that right? The junior? Yes. And then Grange won in 2021, if that makes sense. Obviously with COVID, it flustered things around. So like they're relatively new to going up Clonmore, a little bit newer, of course. And for them to get a double bounce, if that does happen, is amazing stuff. But in many respects, it's probably important from their point of view that they pull the trigger on this opportunity, because just look to the junior this year, for example, and Loughlin Bridge. Like put as championship favourites, can't get past the quarterfinals. Yeah. Finals in Carlow are difficult to get to. You have to strike while the iron is hot. Call it? No idea. Honestly, let's think about that for a few days.
And to give some of the colour as well, the Hickeys. So you've Paddy and James Hickey on the Grange team, and their first cousin Jake playing for Clonmore came on in the second half. Like, whereas would you get to a semi-final stage? And I was actually sitting beside Liam in the stand, and you could tell he obviously he had to be back in Jake, but it was seriously that kind of thing is just that's what G is all about, isn't it? Like,
special, yeah.
There's a cracker of a comment there, Brian. You may get to it. I don't know if you can see it down there at the bottom.
Bambi's or
Bambi's one, yeah.
Took me place in the goal. Now the podcast, Clarkey. That is good.
That is class, in fairness. You deserve hustle on that, just on that one, Clarkey, I suppose, when he brings it up. I mean, like, you spoke about that in Kieran Murphy's book whenever you did that. I mean, it wasn't a God-given right that Stevie was going to step aside or whatever.
No.
And interesting whenever you came over to O'Loughlin.
Yeah, well, the first thing you have to do was respect what Stephen did. I mean, like, he was in goal for the first championship winning team in '97, and they really paved the way for the rest of us. And I mean, the first thing you do is you come in and you train as hard as you can. You totally respect everybody. I mean, if the chance didn't come for 2 or 3 years, you still work. And just privileged to be involved with O'Loughlin out in this village, because the village is just absolutely fantastic. And for me and my family to be out here is the greatest place in the world, and it's just fantastic. The people are just brilliant, and you have to, and that's the reason why I probably joined O'Loughlin, because to get to know everyone in a small village. I mean, GA is obviously everything out here, and when you'd never be an outsider out here, but I mean, when you join the club, I mean, it makes you really, really feel that you finally made it in the village, you know. So listen, I was just lucky that Stephen was at the age he was at, and we were rubbing WD-40 on him, you know, to get him out. And so listen, I not that it took me opportunity or anything like that, but listen, I'd say Stephen was relieved. And I was more relieved when Stephen went, because it wasn't a case of me taking over. It was a case of Stephen actually just stepping away and enjoying other things like running the breed and stuff like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you still look fit. Could you not still play a bit of senior football now?
No, well, Barry Hayes is a brutal manager, lads. You would never pick him. But I was talked out last weekend. I have the Junior A relegation final next Friday night against Tinryland as well. So listen, when you just love playing, I mean, the last thing that kind of started is, like, I was talking to Jerry McGill. I was texting Jerry last night, and the point I made to Jerry was the last thing that probably stops working is your football brain, you know. And you might be twice as sore as a young lad after playing and stuff like that. But I mean, the last thing that stops is probably your brain. And while you still can, I mean, when you retire, you can't come back at it. So once Barry Hayes gets his thoughts right, you know, you never know.
Well, I hope to God that relegation match goes to penalties. There is some crack.
Jesus. Just on that though, Brian, to jump in on that point, actually. The work that, like, no doubt, I know what you do, Clarkey, in terms of, like, you're involved with Flesh in the last couple of years, and you can see improvements in Stephen Scallon's game as well. And I know you'll be modest and say you had no hand actor part, but I know you're very much involved in that whole process, in probably just trying to get a little bit more out of Stephen. I thought his kickouts were good this year. I thought his shot stopping was pretty good, and something that you would have seen pretty close up.
Well, I tell you what, Stephen is a fantastic goalkeeper, and he's added so much to O'Loughlin, especially he's so accurate with short kickouts. It's crazy, lads. I think there was one match this year in the championship where he got 100% out of 100% kickouts, and he's a brilliant lad. Absolutely trains as harder than anyone that I've ever seen. And you know what is, he will be, I would say, asked into the county team this year. I hope he goes in. I think he'll fit into the process in there. You know, I know the lads in with the county, Kieran Cunningham, Fury. I mean, like, he's going to fit in there lovely, and he'll push the lads, you know. And I mean, he has come on, not that he's come on leaps and bounds. He was always a brilliant goalkeeper. He used to play outfield for us. And then he must have heard a few creaks and cracks out of me when I was going to get a ball one time. And I mean, it's fantastic now that he's in goal for O'Loughlin, and there's no better man. I 100% trust him. I love going to games, and we do the warm up together. And it makes me realize, thanks be to God, I'm not going up against this guy to get in goals. I never would, you know. So
there's another point there, Clarkey, as well, actually, that you just touched on. Regan Murphy obviously didn't play today. Robbie Malloy went back in the sticks. So Regan's a former outfield player. Johnny Fury, once upon a time, was an outfield player. Cathal Gaffney was centre back for Tinryland a couple of years ago. Well, Tim Brennan's on the opposite for Rangers. He's gone wing back, but played in goal for the 20s last year, and actually stood in goal for the penalty against Bangladesh a few weeks back. Could you imagine that, Brian? I don't know if we spoke about that in the podcast.
No.
Dean Brennan actually stood out of the goal. So wing back Tim Brennan could go in and try to save the penalty, which was nuts. But it's a common theme in the game that we are now seeing, whereby guys that serve their time as outfield players are going into the goal. You would have stayed outfield with the county, Clarkey, as well, sure.
I did, yeah, and that's why I'm not able to move properly ever since.
Yeah.
But I think Mickey Hart did it with Loud, didn't he? And the two sub keepers walked off the panel, as far as I know. And listen, I mean, if somebody's comfortable going in the goal, work away. But I wouldn't be moving out of the way to let me half back in if I was facing a penalty. No way.
And the position has changed so much. I was even just, I don't know what struck me about the 2 games today, but the fact that kickouts are now taken from the 20-meter line. Like, it's not too long ago where ball goes wide, you're taking the kick out from the small square. I mean, it's a huge difference to the position in terms of the more and the importance on the kick out now. If the day of putting the fellow who's a good shot stopper and someone else can take the kick out, those days are rapidly disappearing if they're not already gone.
Yeah, well, I think even if you take from even soccer, I mean, you look at Pep Guardiola. He brought in your man straight away. He dropped Joe Hart because he was able to play with soccer weights, better with his feet. I think the thing about football is, and I was saying it for years, of course, no one would believe me. So was Stephen Bambrick, that the goalkeeper is the most important person on the whole pitch. But well, it is now, because possession is 9/10 of the law, and that's the thing that gets me with GAA, and it absolutely kills me. Why give up the kick out? Why give an easy kick out to the left or right? And if I was ever over teamed, there's no way that'd be happening. I think it's too easy. I mean, Robbie Malay's kickouts today were absolutely superb. I mean, he was getting absolutely on the sideline. He was getting them right out to the sideline. I mean, Robbie is fantastic, but I do think kickouts are they're there. Like, I mean, like, I think the opposition should make it as hard as they can on kickouts. I think if I was Tardo O'Brien, I'd be starting 2 big men in the centre of midfield and force Tinryland to kick long myself if I was doing that. But listen,
would Tinryland, do you think, give Rogue the kick out? Because I know I can't stand over this and say that they did it for the whole game today, but for a lot of time, Tinryland gave Bindlestown the kick out, and yet they come out 5-point winners. On another day, when that goal chance is taken a little bit earlier and Robbie puts it away and the penalties go in, maybe you'd be saying, well, that's their downfall. It didn't seem to hinder them too much. Is that Clarkey like the exception rather than the rule because they're so good at that defensive wall? Or would you even say from Tinryland's point of view that they possibly should push up as well? Or does that leave them exposed? Is that not playing their Rogues' hands then?
Yeah, well, I think the trouble with Tinryland system is that they'll always keep you in the game because you'll always have the ball. More so than Tinryland will, and it's what you do with that ball. Now they're practicing this system for 2 years now. In fairness, I think they've only lost 1 match in 2 years, and that is the county final last year. So their system is working, for them now. Can they translate that into scores? Again, I mean, like, I think a Rogue will probably have the edge on kickouts if they go along, especially if they start Murta Ware around the middle. I can see maybe Murta starting, Jordan going centre back if Mark Fury can't play. So, I mean, Murta's a big man, and I think if they go along on kickouts, it's going to suit Rogue.
The one thing Bagenstown couldn't do today was break the line. Like, I don't know how many times they had to go cross field or even go through the hands, 5 or 6 players going across the 45, and time again they looked to Clarkey to try and pick an unbelievable pass out, like needle and thread type stuff. But Rogue do have the players, be it Jordan Morrissey, be it Darragh O'Brien, be it Conor Mullins, Colm Hulton. Those lads, with the pace they have and with the confidence they have, they'll have no bother trying to pick a gap and at least trying to go through, whereas Bagenstown just did not seem to have the organisation or the preparedness to actually try and break those lines today.
You touched on one important thing. You touched on one very important thing from today that I actually meant to bring up earlier in relation to that game. If you see, when you're at pitch level and you're a player, it's hard to see this. When you're up a little bit elevated, right, you can see obviously a little bit more. But at times, if you looked at where Tinryland put the wall, the bank across the 45, it was essentially across the 45. Bindlestown's was a little bit deeper, offering them that bit more protection. But where Bindlestown missed the trick was 2 things, actually. Not looking inside that initial layer, where often it was 2-on-2, at very worst 3-on-2, and then the second part of that is the runs over and back in between. If you're constantly making those runs in a 3-on-2, you can dink a ball in over that blanket, lads. Now, I appreciate it is difficult to see it when you've got a heap of lads 6 foot plus lined across the initial bank, but that's somewhere that you could get a little bit of joy. And I'm looking down there, you mentioned your McCarron's. Like, McCarron was quite enough now today, right, by his high standards, and he is only a kid still. Put away the penalty, lovely, I might add. But Dunphy was a little bit quieter today than what he was the previous day. Hulton, they're all shooters.
Dunphy was double marked today.
He was. Sure, they had to. And they had to as well, in fairness to him. But you see the way he led the Rangers defence and Mary Dance. If they can pop a ball into him like that, and that's 3-on-2, like, that is serious danger. And I'm sure they'll identify that.
Or if you said, as you said earlier, Kevin, maybe they looked a bit suspect under the high ball. Would you throw Murta in full forward? And it's going to be hopefully a better day next week, and we had drier ball and get the ball into him. I mean,
and look, and Clarkey, spot on, right? Because you could do what you say, for example, and put Murta into the middle, sit Jonathan Morrissey back centre back, and while Mark Fury is a massive loss, you're looking at that and you're thinking, Jesus, how is that? You're looking out, that's not really weakening too much, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say. Fury's a great player, but Murta Ware is a serious operator too. He made a difference today. Yes, you could put him on the square, but there's an ace in the pack here, lads, right? And it's not someone that people will pick out ordinarily. Remember seeing him play, he was only 18 or 19 3 or 4 years ago, and that's Kyle O'Byrne. He came on today, he's 6'5" or 6", lads. And I think it was against the Blues in the intermediate semi-final, and he was a handful. Now, is that something that Ryan will be expecting? Don't know. But if he was in on the edge of the square, and you had that as your option, or Murta, whichever which way, things become interesting all of a sudden. Then you might have a John Murphy or a Shane Redmond having to go back full back.
Is Kyle, was his nickname Future? No?
Jeez, I don't know, but it's some name.
Well,
it'll have to be present now. At this stage, yeah.
Maybe someone from Rogue, if they're listening or watching, if they can comment and tell us. If I'm nearly sure one of the Burns or something nickname was Future. It's a brilliant nickname. We kind of segued away from the intermediate just to go back to Clamore and Tullow in that final. It's going to be a ding dong battle, and you would have to give them the same respect as what we were saying about the senior lads, in that a week is such a short turnaround for
shocking again, shocking. It's crazy. I mean, like, Jesus, it just 4 weeks to the first round of Leinster for senior. Like, it must be something similar for intermediate, I don't know, but I mean, like, everyone deserves a chance to play in the final. And there's obviously lads going to be injured from a semi-final or whatever it is, but I would say everybody deserves a chance to play in the final.
And even from I can tell you, as a former chairman of a club, even getting the bunting up around the villages, we had a thing 1 year. We got to the final, and we got the seniors got a new set of jerseys, and every young person in the village wanted the new jersey. And at least that time we had a couple of weeks to try to get the orders in. So many things can't be done in a week, Andy Byrne was nicknamed the Future. Thanks very much, Pajot, for that. Appreciate that, Andy. Okay, so not Kyle Byrne, but maybe as of today, Kyle could be Future 2 or something. Back to the Future 2. Yes, that covers off the intermediate. Kev, over to you for the Junior A semi-finals. I was listening to the commentary of the Cox and Ballon in particular the other night, and your voice broke several times with the goals going in, and it just seemed to be an absolute belter of a game.
Hit puberty at 32 years of age, is that what you're saying? Yeah, look, it was a belter, absolutely. It was the most enjoyable game I think I've ever commentated on. It had everything. Like, the Fighting Cocks set up for a nullification of an expected fast start from Ballon, and it didn't work out for them, because Ballon, Liam Brennan, out, this was talk about a knife through butter type of pass inside to Duffy early on, and he puts it in the back of the net. Cox are on the back foot, and then it was trills and spills from there on. It was in Port Ventura in May, and there's a roller coaster called the Dragon Can. It was Dragon Can on steroids is what it was. I cannot find words to sum up just how good a game it was, but I'll give you a simple enough probably breakdown. Scores of the highest caliber, passing of the highest caliber, runners off the shoulder. Simple things, right? But done to an exceptionally high standard, make for a great game of football. Tackling, the most underrated skill in Gaelic football. We blanket defences now because of shy tacklers. And not just shy tacklers, guys who weren't coached to tackle properly. It's probably the best way of putting it. But if you have enough guys that are able to tackle properly, I don't know if we see as many blanket defences. But Ballin in particular in the early stages, the work rate from their forwards and their tackling ability, like we're talking about forwards working back and putting in perfectly in tackles. That was a beautiful facet of it. You're thinking to yourself, how can you talk about such great tackling when one team scores 5-6 and the other scores 2-13? That's the type of game it was. It was that crazy. Like coming down the home stretch in particular, like if people want to listen to any of it, go back and listen to the last 10 or 15 minutes of it, because you just couldn't call it. There was goals going in left, right, and centre. Quigley had an audacious effort. It was right, I suppose, as well. It was bizarre. Ballin keeper Keane Byrne hits the deck. Clearly injured. Players allowed to play on. Out of fairness, even if there was no rule about head injury or whatever, stop the play. Goalkeeper's doing out in force here again, of course. Yep. But Quigley gets the ball on a 65 on the terrorist side. Just an empty goal. It's on the side of the grounds where he used to play. He used to be a blues man. You can picture all this. You just picture all this. Goes for it, makes an absolute hames of it. But it was the right thing to do. He was right to have a pop at it. There was just as Brawley says, there was a sense of adventure about the whole game. And there's something so pure about that Junior A Championship. I love the Junior A Championship. I love the Intermediate Championship, probably more so than the senior one, if I'm brutally honest, because maybe of those errors, because of that pureness, or wherever you want to put it. And Clark's just having a few technical difficulties, so we'll try getting back on the screen. But that was the nuts and bones of that. And I mean, it's that whole thing, Brian. Like, that was the first game the other night. So how do you, even as someone that's involved in broadcasting, bring yourself back down to earth to try and paint some sort of a picture on the second game?
Yeah, it's like they always try and put the football on before the hurling on telly, because if you try to watch a football game after a hurling game, just the pace of it and everything, it just becomes an issue.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Liam Brennan. From listening to the commentary, he seemed to have an absolutely outstanding game, kicking off left and right, and the Cox didn't seem to have much of an answer for him other than to keep firing the ball to the back of the net.
And he's doing this. James Hickey wore 7, but he went back onto him. And when you're getting a score off James Hickey, you're working for it. So that'll tell you how good the scores were and how good that pass was whenever he put in. Evan Core, actually, his free taken off the ground is very, very impressive. Like, they're all distance kicks off the ground. You know, it's mad. If that was the final, you'd be talking about it as the greatest Junior A final of all time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're now looking at probably what is near enough the most intriguing Junior A final of all time. St. Mullins coming up, possibly doing a 3 in a row up the ladder, which I don't know if that's ever been done. But man, it offers serious intrigue. I don't know where you start on even looking at that, but I suppose we'll start with the semi-final. And I went into this game, admittedly, Brian, not knowing a whole lot about Palatine's second team. Sean Buggy is someone that I'll definitely give a shout out to. Sean Buggy in the goal. I think we've Clarkey back with us.
Yeah,
Clarkey, you're all right. Yeah. Sean Buggy was fantastic in the goal. Made several point blankers. Sean Woods at fullback for Palo, when he came out the field, actually a little bit more in the second half, looked really, really good indeed. Matthew Farrell, Dylan Doyle at centre forward really impressed me. Thought he was a great bit of stuff. James Cranny, talk about a guy who, like, you know, you see forward sometimes when they take on a few shots and they go away, they drop the head. Didn't drop the head. Kept running. Won every ball that came in. Was rewarded with a couple of points in the second half. Pal lost Scobie Reid in the second half early on. Just a moment of madness, and he had to go. By all accounts, I didn't see it. Neither did Joe or Stevie. But spoke the guys after, and it was a straight red. And you could probably tell by his body language when he didn't argue it, he had to go, and he knew, fake it after losing the hair momentarily. Would it have been enough to turn the game? I don't believe so. I think St. Mullins were pretty dominant throughout. I mean, it did get back to a 2 or 3 point game, having said that. But I'm looking down at a lot of strokes of a pen here beside St. Mullins on top of the programme. and that's wides. They went into double figures. So they created more opportunities. They are getting better game on game. They're obviously a physical side, we know that. They're fit, but their football is improving week on week.
Mm.
It's going to be some battle. I don't know where you'd even start with looking at, to be honest.
Just on that, Kevin, we actually played St. Mullins in the group stages down in St. Mullins now, and I was amazed to come off the pitch. I thought we'd lost by about 16 points because it was like kicking the ball against the wall. I was coming straight back in, but we only lost by 6 points. And as you said, listen, their shooting was a bit awry then, but I mean, they were moving at a serious pace. Obviously, seriously fit lads from the hurling and stuff like that. But don't underestimate the likes of Marty Kavanagh and that. I mean, they're very, very good footballers. And you don't just go up through the ranks of junior and everything like that and get to finals. As you said, finals are very hard to get to. So do not underestimate how good this St. Mullins team is, you know.
Yeah, agreed.
I am just after remembering back to my refereeing days. I'm almost certain I was doing linesman at an intermediate league final between St. Mullins and Aska. So it's not okay. It's not that long ago. It's a long time ago since they were competitive at intermediate. But the question I want to ask is, if you were to look at the Fighting Cocks and St. Mullins, and one of them is going to be intermediate next year, in terms of regular footballers, you'd probably give Fighting Cocks more of a hope of going up and staying up, whereas it'd be a massive challenge for St. Mullins to go up, and they may well do. But and I suppose one of the benefits maybe of the 5 or 6 weeks in a row is St. Mullins massively benefit from being solely focusing on football now for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and it allows for that improvement. So there's so many different ways of cutting this and looking at it. But you said it, Kev, it's going to be such an intriguing Junior A final.
Yeah, sure it is. Like there's no two ways about it. Was it? I don't want to. I'll just say it was Joe or Stevie. I think I know who it was. Said the other night that at times with the way St. Mullins are playing now, their shooting needs to improve. Right, that is the big elephant in the room. Clarkey said it there. It's I can't remember what their wides tally was against Loughlin Bridge, but certainly the other night wasn't great. Seamus Murphy said it himself. If they start improving on that, Cox could be in a little bit bother, right? But the point was, one of the lads said that the way St. Mullins were playing when they're in form, if they were to play the current Leinster Rangers senior football team, would you tip for a senior championship, I think, Brian? Would there be much in it? And I thought about that for a second, and I said, that might be a mad thing to come out with. But hold on now. Would there be? Would there be, actually? So you're saying about the Fighting Cocks going intermediate, I suppose, and probably, by all accounts, the earlier games, like St. Mullins probably, they got a fierce tanking off Pal in the first round, right? And got over yourselves, Clarkey. And then the big one was Ballin. Now, next year, if they were, say, for argument's sake, to go intermediate, you can't afford to ease into an intermediate championship, the same as Junior A, because you get such a bait in your first 2 games. You won't have to play for in the third round, probably. And if, with the new score difference thing or head-to-heads and all this, so who knows anyway, to you. But I would say, like, in terms of taking it seriously and having guys that are better equipped to have an assault at an intermediate, sure, it's a no-brainer. The Cocks are training for the last, we'll say 9 months. Say ones are training for the last 6 weeks. And that defies all logic. And that's what makes this interesting, because it's still a 50-50 game.
Yeah, and I suppose we shouldn't underestimate, I mean, Maurice Brown and Tony Bulger over the Cocks, and I was helping out Maurice with the under-20s, and he's a serious football brain, you know. He's fantastic. And on the other side of it is, you have St. Mullins players that are used to playing in a top-class full pelt. They're winners, you know. Not everybody's winners, but they are serious winners. They're on playing for Carlow in Croke Park. I mean, like, these boys, once they cross the white line, whether it's hurling, football, they don't want to lose, you know. And so it's going to be a fantastic final, you know. Bit of Cox blood in me as well, so we'll see how it go.
Yeah.
Is your mammy for the Cocks?
My dad, yeah. From Greg Spinall. Yeah.
Which is, I thought, okay. And so the bike shop, or the home place then for you is
in Tullow, but my dad's home place would be Greg Spinall.
I never knew that. That's
yes, yeah.
My God.
Next election information sorted.
Yeah.
Absolutely noted. Although, yeah, but come here, Kev. In the Cox Ballon match, did Mahi Dowling kick a sideline, or?
And you know what the sad thing is, Brian? I don't know if that game was videoed. I don't know, but I would plea for anyone that potentially did video it to share that clip online. It was Matty Dowling. What Stevie said? Matty Ford megamorphed into Matty Dowling, featuring a Morris Fitzgerald special. It was class. He looked around. There was nothing on. He said, "Fake it," outside of the right peg. It was unbelievable. You had to see to believe it. And
kicking into the scoreboard then, was it? Or?
He was kicking into the scoreboard, and he's between the 21 and 14 flags. Like, that's how tight the angle was. Like, it was probably more impressive than Morris Fitzgerald's one, given the angle he had was a little bit more significant, I suppose, in what he had to do, or what he was trying to do, and what he achieved. Yeah, that was phenomenal, actually. Yeah. Checking sorely in the game, pretty forgot about it. Yeah.
So savage that even Mikey Moore is saying it was savage. So that's a huge compliment. And I've no doubt Matty will print off what you just said. Matty Dowling more impressive than Morris Fitzgerald, and stick it up in the bedroom to admire. Moving on to the Junior B, then we have an epic clash happening there. Battle of Carrow Town. Aska via Rogue. Aska had I suppose a massive victory over Clamore this morning. Obviously, Clamore lost two of their main players in that panel to the intermediates yesterday, so it was a real hockey, which won't actually benefit Aska to in any shape or form. And Rogue beat Rathvilly by 6 points this morning out in the Island. Actually, I think the two games were happening side by side on the two pitches, which is interesting as well. But yeah, the bragging rights in Carlow Town for and there definitely cannot be two clubs that are closer than Aska and Rogue, so it'll be really, really exciting to see that one.
Yeah, we played Aska in a practice match now, and they're just moving seriously well. They're very good. And what you say about Rogue is Rogue, if you play their first, second, third, fourth, fifth team, they have footballers. The footballers all the way down, and I mean, like it's a fantastic final. There'll be loads of banter, loads of colour, loads of everything. And your point, when is that final, Brian?
Sunday. The Junior B is with the senior, I believe, and the Junior A and Intermediate are Saturday.
Okay, like, I mean, again, wouldn't you love for 2 weeks there to build that up? Like as you say, get the bunting out. I could get a bit of crack going, But again, listen, it's just crazy. There's no reason for this. Is it to facilitate the likes of the Kildare County Finals, which shouldn't be happening? You know what I mean? Like let's look after our own,
That's an absolutely brilliant point. When is the Kildare County Final?
I don't know. Is the semi-finals and final in
previous weekend? Then isn't it the 15th? I'll go back and check the tweet again. Well, I think it possibly is. Yeah. So, sure. Look, it is what it is. I guess. I suppose. It's unfortunate that we're talking about it, but here we are, I guess. But from Aska's point of view, it's no different to what we're saying about St. Patrick's and Clamore getting senior. Like, we need Aska back up the ranks, and the strides that they've made in recent years shouldn't go unnoticed. There's a perception, and that is very disingenuous to Aska, that they get players that have come from Aero and have come from the Blues. That was probably thrown at them in years gone by. But if you look at what they're doing with underage sides, they're organic players and they're impressive players. And there's a lot of those now after filtering through already onto the senior side, which is great. It's great to see in one sense, but it brings back the age-old argument too. And I don't wish to change from Junior B to this particular one, but you look at Portlaoise, and you look at one club in the whole of Portlaoise, and we look at our town, and we have Aero with the Blues and Aska. And sure, I was looking at, actually saw a clip of Ender Rowland in goal for his club today. He scored a goal from a puck out over in Laois, right? Ender Rowland could probably puck two slitters from O'Hanrahan's down to Aero and bypass Aska's pitch on the way, and we're looking at 3 different clubs now. I know we had a bit of crack with Billy Fanning with amalgamations last week, but there's a fair split there. And then Pal not being too far away, Tinryland only out the road. Yeah. Look at Portlaoise and look at Naas as well as examples, and the numbers games that's involved there. I don't know what point I'm trying to make, but it's just that there is a stark difference, basically.
Definitely. And and we can't ignore Greg as well. There was a time when Greg played football in Carlow, and that if there was another club there, it would be just incredible. I have to mention my colleague Fintan Phelan, who regularly cheers for Éire Óg, and then when Aska get to a final, he cheers for them as well. I think his brother even plays midfield for Aska, so I'd be absolutely fascinated to see what jersey he'll be wearing next Sunday morning. So give him a shout out there. To recap all the finals then, so it's Aska v Éire Óg in the Junior B, it's St Mullins v the Fighting Cocks in the Junior A, it's Clonmore v Tullow in the intermediate, and it's Tinryland and Éire Óg in the senior. Anybody that would have predicted those four parents in a final would be well worthy of being a millionaire.
I'd say so. And do you know what we haven't got to yet? There's a few relegations final this week of serious importance.
Jeez,
Yeah,
Christ.
Friday night.
Yeah, so Clark, you're on before Pal and Fenna, is it?
Fenna, yeah.
Yourselves and Tinryland are 7 in the junior relegation playoff, and then the senior one's half 8. Yeah,
Johnny Nevin has out training there for 6 nights a week. Johnny has trained us, so he has gone strong.
That's because he's getting 100 night.
Wouldn't even cover.
we won't push Clarkey on a prediction for that one, for fear of being accused of maybe a possible match fixing scandal or something, like another famous goalkeeper called Mr. Gobbler. But this senior relegation final has garnered a lot of intrigue over recent weeks. There's a genuine feeling that Fenna have a right chance in this, a right good chance. Now, by the same token, a lot of people feel there's no way Potter are going to get relegated. It's not going to happen. Clarkey, here's the hard question for you now. What way do you see it going?
Well, it's very interesting that the 1 year O'Loughlin are not in it. They decided to bring it into the county grounds, and this is it. I mean, like we played relegation finals on a Wednesday night out in Fenna at 8 o'clock, 8:30, and spilling rain and tight pitch and everything, But listen, that's maybe for the hierarchy. But I think Fenna would have stood a lot better chance if it was out in the training centre. I think the open space will probably suit Pal much better. I think Fenna have a free shot at this. I mean, they have a lot of young players and they've nothing to lose. Listen, go for it. Palantine have the experience, obviously, and they won't want to go down because, I mean, like, they're county champions. I mean, there's pride there, and saying, listen, when is the last time county champions got relegated? I don't know, but listen, anything can happen in relegation. Anything, and I mean, like, did Fenna go 6 points up against Tinryland at one stage? So I mean, like, if you lay in high balls, anything can happen. It's just, I do expect Palantine to win, but Fenna have a free shot. Go for it,
Clarkey, didn't he get to the county final the year after being in a relegation final? It was 08.
Yeah, when Joe took us over. Yeah, when Joe took us over, and we got 3 finals in a row then, last one and 1-2 under Joe. Yeah. Like I mean, like, to win one, and when structure comes in and everything goes right, I mean, like, that's why this year was massive for O'Loughlin. Okay, we didn't get past the quarter final, but the pressure of playing in a relegation. Now, I played in relegation finals. I played in a county final, and there's more pressure in a relegation final than there'll ever be in a county final, because you just don't want to be on the pitch when you get relegated. And I have got relegated with Tullow years ago, and that, like, and it's the worst place in the world. It's the worst place in the world. So you don't want to be there, and I think that the pressure on players in that situation is a hell of a lot more than a pressure on a player in the county final,
And Fenna are just simply going to have to, what's the word would you say, express themselves or play with it, abandon. But there's so much more football in them than they're showing this year. And I know from talking to David Hickey and a couple of other Fenna lads, they were really hampered in trying to get their couldn't get. I think did they get 3 practice games in before the championship started? I think some of the likes of Erogan, Philly, and Tyrion probably played 8, 9, 10 challenge games, and that there's a massive gulf then in terms of even rustiness and all that kind of thing. But like Pal, you'd have to say it's, I don't know what the odds are, but you have to say Pal will surely stay up there. The county champions, there's some serious football and talent there. But if Fenna can get it together and I suppose get up for it and express themselves between Choo Choo and Pádraig Hines and Lumux, and as you start listing off the names there in Fenna, you're going, why would they fear anybody?
I don't suspect, Brian, that they'll feel as much pressure. I'm not suggesting anything. Yeah, I'm not suggesting anything untoward, right? But Fenna can't really feel as much pressure as Pal coming in here. Like, there's probably an embarrassment from Pal's point of view that they've ended up here as county champions, right? In their own club, that has happened. So that brings a bit of pressure as well. Now, Fenna won't want to go down, but I'm not going to say there was an acceptance, but there was a kind of a well-known theory from the get-go that Fenna were going to struggle because preparation hadn't been where it was. That, I don't know, was that as clear with Pal. And I mean, when push comes to shove, both of these teams have shown in pressure games that they can perform, right? So Pal are county champions. They've got themselves into this situation. It hasn't been a good year, but they've proven on a day when it matters that they can deliver the goods. And then you have these Fenna guys. Yes, the championship hasn't gone well. How many finals? I'll put it to you this way. How many finals have Hines and like them lads lost in anything? Mm-hmm. Very little. Very little. Take the fact that there's no cup here, it's survival. I think it's a really intriguing game. I very much looking forward to that. Kilbride Michael the night before in the intermediate playoff. That's Thursday. I don't know the exact time. I'll check it before we go off here.
I think the public order unit has been called in for that one.
Yeah, that's going to be just complete arm wrestle, isn't it?
Jeez, I just remembered. I think Rathvilly were the last county champions to end up in 2005. We won it 2004, and then Mara was in the Rose of Tralee, and the entire village and its mother went down to Tralee, and we lost to.
No, that's Rangers.
Rangers, wasn't it?
In Bagnestown.
Yeah, and I think we were the last county champions to end up in a relegation. That's.
You're blaming Maura Murphy for that.
100%. 100%. And she knows it.
Creeper Darren want to be careful. She get the blame for losing today's semi-final.
Absolutely. No.
You're wrong, man.
They're two superstars.
But half 7 that game is, so just checked it there.
And that intermediate relegation, I actually when Kilbride lost to who did Kilbride lose the last game to? Remind me, was it
lost by a point to Ballarana, I think, wasn't it?
And come out of the grounds, and I just happened to be talking to Liam Foley and Anthony Curry, and Anthony's in an awful state there because having won, I don't know how many senior hurling medals he has with Naomh Eoin, and obviously Stephen and Alan involved with Kilbride. It's a real saucy one, and you'd feel for him. And then Junior A relegation is yourselves, Clarkey, and who did we say? Right. And then is there relegation in Junior B?
I don't know. Was that fixed up? Actually, I wasn't minding too much.
I don't know that.
To be honest, but yeah, I think that's where we're at. Is ladies' finals next weekend? I think possibly as well.
Is it 2:00 on Saturday in Dr. Cullen Park?
Dr. Cullen Park's going to be busy Saturday.
It is, yeah.
It will. And it's funny. Was it? Croc was saying yesterday in an interview that he thought the bunting would have been put up for the men in Clonmore, but it was actually put up for St. Bridget's because the women got to the county final first. So that was interesting. But like it's been a hectic 5 weeks and been absolutely fascinating. And next weekend now you could nearly do a 2-hour show for the next weekend with whatever way results are going to go. And who knows, there might even be a few more penalties.
Yeah, and then there's a tool who approves annual leave for someone on the most important week of the year. All right, Dunzer. Me being the tool and you would lad that's going on annual leave. Yeah.
I want to blame. See that thing? Where is this? See that thing in my finger there?
Yeah, be careful now because it could be sawn off you. Yeah, and if you want to get tools, of course, you can go to Connie's Top Line in Bynstown. Just to put in a shameless plug there. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's been something, as you say, magical about the football championships. I think they've been absolutely brilliant. As regards our plans the next few days, who knows? Phone calls probably will be made sometime tomorrow to see what we will or won't do. It can be difficult. We didn't get a hurling up for the match. I don't know if we'll have a football one, but we'll see what we can do in terms of interviews during the week.
I hope you do, because I'll be in the south of Spain and I'll be dying to tune in from a bar with a little beer in my hand. So please, and I'll appeal to all the clubs to come and get involved and do it up for the match, because it'll be great crack.
Yeah, they generally tend to be that way, I suppose. Yeah. And to see them, it's been great crack as well, Dunzer. Thanks a million.
And thanks, Clarkey.
Thanks.
For your money. You're 10 times better than Mick Yo.
Does that say that?
It's a low bar, you know. But no, I suppose, unless there's anything else, Kev, thanks, Mill, for letting me host again, and thanks for the last few weeks. It's been an absolute pleasure, and great to have the chats and the postmortems after everything, and keep up the great work. And thanks, Mill, to you.
Yeah, look, thanks, guys. I'll just thank the sponsors very quickly. We have these on the screen: Connie's Top Line, Earthspa, Scats, J&J Services, Seamus Sport and Electrical, Talbot Fitness, PFT Travel, the Arboretum, Rail Wheeling, and Car Electrical Service. To the listeners and contributors this evening, and of course, Dunzer and Clarkey, thank you very much. Really, really enjoyable.
Cheers, Kev.
Take care, folks.